Chapter 1. The First Move. Sophia had always loved games. Growing up, she was the kind of person who would spend hours playing board games with her family, trying to outwit her siblings and parents. But as she got older, she found herself drawn to a different kind of game, one that required not just strategy, but patience, focus, and a deep understanding of patterns. That game was chess. It wasn't that Sophia had no interest in other activities. She had a successful career as a software engineer and was known for her meticulous attention to detail. But there was something about chess that captivated her. The quiet concentration required for every move, the thrill of outsmarting an opponent, and the endless possibilities of strategy. Chess was a game that matched her personality perfectly. Sophia had learned the game when she was in high school, but it wasn't until a few years ago, when she was 28, that she began to take it seriously. At first, it was just a way to relax after work, a way to challenge her mind in a different way. She'd play against computer opponents, slowly improving her skills over time. But soon, she found herself looking for more than just a casual game. She wanted to test her abilities against real opponents, to see how far she could go with her passion. One evening, as she was scrolling through her phone, she came across an ad for a local chess tournament. It was an amateur event, open to anyone who wanted to participate. Sophia hesitated for a moment. She wasn't sure if she was ready for a real tournament, especially not against people who had been playing for much longer than she had. But something inside her pushed her to sign up. She had always believed in pushing herself to take on new challenges, and this was just another opportunity to prove to herself that she could do it. The tournament was held at a local community center, and when Sophia arrived, she was surprised by the number of people there. The room was filled with people of all ages, from young teenagers to older adults, all sitting at tables, facing off against their opponents. The air was thick with the sound of concentration, the clicking of chess pieces being moved, and the occasional murmur of someone strategizing out loud. Sophia took a deep breath and walked to her assigned table. Her opponent was an older man, probably in his 50s, with graying hair and a serious expression. He didn't look at her as she sat down, his attention completely absorbed by the board in front of him. Sophia set up her pieces, trying to steady her nerves. She had played chess before, but this was different. This wasn't just a casual game. It was a real tournament, and she wanted to win. The game began, and Sophia immediately felt the pressure. Her opponent was quick, moving his pieces with a quiet confidence that made her feel like she was always one step behind. She had to think fast, planning her moves while anticipating his next ones. As the game progressed, she realized that this wasn't going to be as easy as she had hoped. Her opponent was good, better than anyone she had played before. But she wasn't going to back down. She had spent months preparing for this moment, studying openings, practicing tactics, and learning from her mistakes. She wasn't about to let all that effort go to waste. After about 30 minutes, the tension in the room began to build. People were watching her game, some of them glancing over at her every now and then, as though they were waiting for her to make a mistake. But Sophia refused to let the pressure get to her. She focused on the game, blocking out the world around her. The man made a bold move, advancing his queen to a position where it could threaten several of Sophia's pieces. She quickly analyzed the situation, her mind racing as she tried to find a way out of the trap he was setting for her. For a moment, she froze. She wasn't sure what to do. But then, as if a light bulb went off in her head, she saw an opportunity. She moved her knight into position, protecting her pieces and threatening his queen. It was a bold move, one that surprised her opponent. He raised an eyebrow but didn't say anything. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, studying the board. Sophia could tell that he hadn't expected that move. He had underestimated her. She could see the doubt creeping into his expression as he realized that his plan had been disrupted. The game continued for another hour, each of them making calculated moves, trying to gain the upper hand. Sophia's mind was sharp, and her instincts were guiding her through the game. She didn't know if she could win, but she was determined to make it a challenge for him. And with each passing minute, she grew more and more confident in her abilities. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the moment arrived. Her opponent made a mistake, a small but crucial error that opened the door for Sophia to checkmate him. She saw it immediately. His king was trapped, and there was no way for him to escape. Her heart raced as she moved her queen into position. "Checkmate," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Her opponent stared at the board, his face expressionless for a moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. "Well played," he said, his tone respectful. "You've got a good mind for this game." Sophia couldn't believe it. She had won. The room around her seemed to fade away, as a sense of triumph washed over her. She had done it. She had beaten someone who had far more experience than her, and it felt incredible. But as the adrenaline faded, a new thought crept into her mind. This was just the beginning. The tournament wasn't over yet. There were more rounds to play, more challenges ahead. But for the first time in a long time, Sophia felt ready. As she walked away from the table, her heart still racing, she couldn't help but smile. The game had just begun, and she was ready for whatever came next. Chapter 2. The Road Ahead. Sophia left her first match with a smile on her face, still processing the victory that felt surreal. The adrenaline from winning her first game of the tournament hadn't fully worn off, and as she walked through the crowded room, she could see the nervous energy in the other players. Some were just getting settled into their games, while others were halfway through, deep in concentration. She felt the weight of the competition, but she wasn't intimidated. Winning that first round had given her the confidence boost she needed. Her next opponent was a young woman, probably in her early 20s, who appeared to be just as focused and serious about the game as Sophia had been in her first match. She had short, dark hair, and her eyes were sharp, constantly scanning the board. Sophia could tell right away that this would be another challenge. She had been expecting a wide range of skill levels at the tournament, but she wasn't prepared to face someone who was so intense this early on. "Good luck," the young woman said, her tone polite but firm. "You too," Sophia replied, sitting down across from her. The game began, and right away it was clear that this opponent wasn't going to make it easy for Sophia. The first few moves were tense and calculated, with both players carefully planning their strategies. Sophia was aware that her previous victory had been a surprise, but she couldn't let that make her complacent. She knew that every opponent had something different to offer. Her new opponent, whose name was Lisa, played with a style that was more aggressive than Sophia's. She advanced her pieces quickly, constantly putting pressure on Sophia's defenses. It was a stark contrast to the older man she had played in the first round, who had been more methodical and patient. Lisa, on the other hand, was fast, constantly on the attack. Sophia had to think quickly, balancing offense and defense, trying to keep up with Lisa's aggressive moves. Every time Lisa moved a piece, it seemed like she had already planned the next 3 moves in advance. Sophia found herself on the defensive much more often than she would have liked, but she didn't let that discourage her. Instead, she embraced the challenge. It was exactly what she needed to push herself forward. The game went on for what felt like hours. Sophia's mind raced with calculations, constantly evaluating each move, each countermove. She had always been good at analyzing patterns, and this was no different. But Lisa was relentless, forcing Sophia into positions that she hadn't considered before. With each new challenge, Sophia's respect for Lisa grew. At one point, Lisa made a bold move, advancing her queen to put Sophia's king in a check position. The move was so sudden and unexpected that Sophia felt a rush of panic. For a moment, her mind went blank. The board in front of her seemed to blur as she tried to figure out how to escape the check. Her heart pounded in her chest. This was the moment she had feared, the moment when her strategy could fall apart. But then, something inside her clicked. She had studied openings and defense strategies for months. She knew the importance of keeping her king safe, of always having an escape route. Slowly, she pushed aside the panic and focused, scanning the board for any possible moves. Her eyes locked on her knight, and a realization dawned on her. She could use the knight to block the check, protecting her king and gaining the upper hand. Without hesitating, she moved the knight into position, narrowly escaping the trap that Lisa had set for her. It was a moment of clarity, and she felt a rush of relief wash over her. Lisa stared at the board for a moment, a flicker of surprise crossing her face. She hadn't expected Sophia to recover so quickly. "Nice move," she said, her tone acknowledging the skill behind the escape. "You almost had me there." Sophia smiled, feeling a surge of confidence. "You're a tough opponent. This isn't going to be easy." The game continued, with both players exchanging moves, each one trying to outwit the other. Sophia realized that Lisa's style of play was making her a better player too. She had been forced to think in new ways, considering more aggressive tactics, and it was improving her game. The pressure, the fast pace, everything about this match was pushing her beyond what she had thought she was capable of. The room was quiet except for the occasional sounds of chess pieces moving and the soft murmurs of spectators watching other games. It was as though the whole world had faded away, leaving just Sophia and Lisa locked in their silent battle of minds. With every move, Sophia felt more in tune with the game. It was no longer just a challenge. It was a test of her mental endurance, her ability to think ahead and anticipate every possible move. But eventually, despite her best efforts, Lisa's aggressive play started to take its toll on Sophia. Lisa had put together a series of tactical moves that gradually pushed Sophia into a corner. After a long stretch of intense play, it became clear that Sophia's position was becoming increasingly difficult to defend. Lisa's pieces were strategically positioned, and Sophia's remaining pieces were scattered and vulnerable. Sophia knew that the end was near. She had fought hard, but Lisa's skill had proven to be overwhelming. Finally, Lisa made her move, advancing her queen to deliver the final checkmate. There was no way for Sophia to escape this time. "Checkmate," Lisa said softly, her voice full of respect. "You played well. I'll be honest, I didn't expect it to be this close." Sophia nodded, her chest heaving with exhaustion. "You were amazing. I didn't think you'd be able to pull that off. But you did. Well played." Lisa smiled, reaching across the table to shake her hand. "It was a great game. You're a tough opponent." Sophia stood up, a mixture of disappointment and pride swirling inside her. She had lost, but she had learned so much from the game. She had pushed herself, tested her limits, and discovered new strategies. That, in itself, was a victory. As she walked away from the table, she knew that the journey wasn't over. The tournament was still ongoing, and there was much more to learn. But she was determined to improve, to come back stronger in the next round. Chess, she realized, wasn't just about winning. It was about growth, learning from every game, and continuously challenging yourself to become better. The next match would be even tougher, but Sophia was ready for it. She wasn't done yet.